Hello, welcome to the Everything is Black and White podcast. Hit that subscribe button if you're new to the channel. Plenty of content coming your way. Just here at Green Park, we're just catching a tube back to our hotel. We've just left Wembley. It's devastating, really, to be sitting here in Newcastle United, having won the Carabao Cup. Man United win 2-0 thanks to goals from Casemiro and an own goal from Botman. Newcastle didn't do too much wrong, but they didn't really seize the opportunity. You felt Man United were there for the taking in many ways of Newcastle getting behind them, but they didn't create enough chances. They defended all right, but it's just 6 minutes of madness from Newcastle's point of view. Madness might be a strong word, but careless, I think. Another set-piece goal, which will really annoy Eddie Howe. They're not clear in the lines when it comes to set-pieces. And he won't be very happy with that. The ball comes in, it's good delivery, but Shared doesn't jump as high as Casemiro. Casemiro wants the ball, and he heads it home. Second goal, Rashford shoots, Botman gets something on it, and it goes over Karius. Nothing Karius could do about it. Karius, of course, was a man who was grabbing the headlines in the build-up as a man looking for redemption. Obviously hasn't played competitive game football for 2 years, comes in after Nick Pope's suspension, talking about redefining his career, pulled off some good saves, couldn't do anything about the goals. Be interested to see what the future holds for him. Really good save actually from Marcus Rashford's effort in the second half, tipped it wide. I think the tube's coming, so what I'll do is I'm going to end this here and then I'm going to jump straight back on. Maybe on the tube, if it's quiet enough. I'll be back in just a moment. So just off the tube now. It was a little bit too loud to record on the tube, but just walking back to the hotel now. So yeah, we just mentioned there about Loris Karius coming in from the cold and doing very well. I thought, making some really important saves because Weghorst had a fantastic effort in the first half. There was an effort from Marcus Rashford. The scoreline could have finished much worse than 2-0. I think what will disappoint Newcastle United is that Man United had Newcastle managed to get at them. Were probably there for, I wouldn't say the taking, but certainly vulnerable of conceding a few goals. But Newcastle United, other than a couple of blocks, didn't really do too much. Dan Burn headed one wide down, St Maximin forced a good save from De Gea, and there was a header that was also pushed wide. But for all, Newcastle kind of pushed Manchester United. Man United looked comfortable and always dangerous on the break. I don't think Newcastle did themselves any harm in their performance. It was just a little bit kind of, I think average would be the word. Not bad, but nothing to really write home about. But I think the overarching picture is that everyone is very, very proud of Newcastle for getting to a final. We mentioned about where they were this time last season. It's probably another time to wheel out that phrase of, the bigger picture, put it into a bit of perspective. You're devastated to lose a cup final. Of course, you get to a final, you want to win it, but you haven't managed it. But it goes back to, the club were in a complete mess this time last year in terms of, where they looked like they were heading. So to be in a cup final and chasing European football is absolutely fantastic. And I think you take the positives from this game and you look to build on it. You look to take the foundations going forward. That's what Dan Burn said as well. He doesn't want this feeling that he's got, that the other players have got in the dressing room. He doesn't want this feeling again. They've got targets to match this season. That's European football. And hopefully there'll be another cup final next season. Now, the big call today was that Callum Wilson started ahead of Alexander Isak. It was a decision, I think, that split many. Of course, you trust Eddie Howe because he's the manager and he works with these players day in, day out, and he is obviously the one paid to make the calls. But I think a lot of people had opinions on this. I thought Isak should start, more minutes on the belt. He's looked sharp in the games he has played. Callum Wilson, of course, scores against West Ham, picks up the injury, misses Bournemouth, doesn't train for many days. And then obviously comes off the bench in the last league game against Liverpool. Starts today. Was he sharp enough? Arguably not. He just doesn't look the same player since the World Cup, unfortunately. That's a real shame because he's a real goal scorer, a really worthy player of that Newcastle United number 9. Did he justify his start today in the starting 11? I'm not too sure he did. Newcastle didn't lose because Callum Wilson didn't perform. It was kind of a team thing. As I mentioned earlier, poor defending is why they didn't win. But Isak comes off the bench and for me was Newcastle's best player of the afternoon. He's only had 45 minutes. He just looked intent on creating something, driving forward, creative. Okay, didn't have a shot on goal, fair enough, but he looked like the only player who was going to create something, and that was really important. Wilson just didn't look sharp, didn't really do too much, and I think Newcastle have got to solve that going forward. Does Callum Wilson start against Manchester City next year in the Premier League is probably the big question, I think, for the weekend, because he's just not looking like the Callum Wilson of old. How do you solve that? That's the £1 million question, I guess. For me, you start Isak. I thought what was interesting though was the fact that, you know, Isak came on as a number 10. He came on for Sean Longstaff, and you know, he suited that number 10 role. My colleague Aaron Stokes on a podcast made a good point. He's not too sure that Eddie Howe kind of knows where Isak's best position is. Could it be in that number 10? Probably not against Manchester City, but going forward against lesser teams, could it be that number 10? It'd be quite interesting to see if he does start with Callum Wilson, because that's always been the big debate. I think today we showed he can play in that number 10. No goals, of course, for all the effort from the two guys. But yeah, it's an interesting one going forward. You know, the question is, did Eddie Howe make the right call in starting Callum Wilson? I suppose it's a small question in the grand scheme of things. People will have their opinions. For me, I still think Isak should have started. But hey, like I said, Newcastle didn't lose because of Callum Wilson. They just lost because of 6 minutes of poor defending. And unfortunately, the good teams are clinical. The best teams are clinical. And I think that's probably been one of Newcastle's downfalls over the last 6 weeks, of not being clinical when the chances have come to them. We saw it again today. The few chances they did have, you know, didn't take them. The couple of chances Manchester United did have, they took them. They take the cup home. That's the way it is. That's football for you. So just a word on the fans. You know, fantastic display before kick-off, black and white. Foils across the end that Newcastle United fans were in. They were in great voice. It really seemed like home. Was as close to St James's Park as you can make it, and they were always there with their team. And there was a really nice moment at the end of the game as well. 2 minutes to go, Newcastle not getting back into it. Not even the most optimistic fan would say Newcastle were getting back into it. And as the Manchester United fans held their scarves aloft and started singing, Newcastle United fans lifted their flags up, and the whole end turned into a sea of black and white, and it was absolutely fantastic. A little bit emotional as well, and I think you're the players, you're seeing that, you're feeling heartbroken, you're feeling down, but you see that and you realise you're at a very, very special club. I think that's what you take away from that. And if you were in any doubt about how special this club is, how special these fans are, you would have seen that, and you would have been left in no doubt. You'll get back, you'll see the photographs, the videos of not just today but the whole weekend. Really, it's been very special. You know, the chairman Asser Al-Romani was in the crowd as well. Well, in the one of the boxes alongside Amanda Staveley, Jamie Rubin, Medad Gadusi, and you know, I think they know what a special club they've got. But they saw today once again in person, absolutely fantastic. And this is just the beginning as well. I think that's probably the positive you can take about it. You look where Newcastle have come from, but you look at where they're going to, and it won't be another 24 years till the next final. I'm willing to bet my house on that. So come back and find us in 24 years if I'm wrong. But it won't be. You know, and hopefully there'll be Premier League titles, and this time next season there'll be European nights. This is just the beginning. I think Newcastle fans, the owners, the players who will be here long term have probably really had that, you know, it's whet their appetite for what's to come, because you want those scenes that we saw at Wembley today every single season, every single February and May come the FA Cup and League Cup. You want it when you lift the Premier League title. And I think for potential rivals as well, it's a brilliant sell, isn't it? I mean, you know, we didn't see one Man United fan yesterday, and I don't even think I saw 100 before I got into the stadium. And Newcastle United fans, thousands of them without tickets, were down here just enjoying it, taking it in. And Man United fans might say, well, you know, might wear that as a badge of honour. You know, this cup wasn't that big to us. That's why we didn't come down and make the most of it. Well, okay, that's maybe the opinion of Man United fans, but Newcastle United fans have met everything. And there's been a few questions about what happens in a couple of years' time if they get to, you know, consistently getting to EFL Cup finals. Will it matter? Will it matter as much? And I think it will do. I think every time Newcastle United get to a final, whether it's now or 3, 4, 5 years down the line, every single final will matter because of what Newcastle have been through not just over the last 14 years, but the dark days of the 80s, the early years of the entertainers. There's a thirst for trophies, there's a thirst for honours, and this club is a very special club. The fans are so passionate, and we saw that today in abundance. And I think, honestly, the scenes, especially at the end, very emotional. I think they'll stay with me for a very long time. And it's a shame Newcastle couldn't take the trophy home with them, but I don't think there's cause to be negative. I don't think there's too much cause to be down. More than the result. We look ahead to Manchester City on the weekend. We've got to get back to that league campaign. Newcastle need to pick up a win. I think it's one win in 7, isn't it? 3 goals scored in the Premier League this year. Their form needs to pick up. They've got a league campaign to worry about. Fulham closing in on them. Brighton not too far behind them. The slip behind Spurs, and of course Manchester United. So they need to pick up form. They can't rest too much on this result today here in London, here at Wembley. I don't think they will do. Maybe get a day off tomorrow, back into training on Tuesday, and kickstart that Premier League campaign again. And hopefully now the cup final's out of the way. Would have been nice to getting out of the way with a win, but hopefully now it's out of the way, they can concentrate on the league, get back to winning ways, and finish the season on a high. European football, and then onto the transfer window, isn't it? And I think it's quite interesting as well. Just finally on the transfer window, I think we saw today the depth that Man United had to bring off the bench in terms of Sancho, Maguire, and the good players that they can bring off. They can change the game tactically. They can change the game exactly how they want to, with some really good changes. Newcastle couldn't really do that. Jacob Murphy comes off the bench. He actually did all right, I thought. Isak obviously came off the bench and was, for me, as I said, probably Newcastle's best player. But Man United are bringing off, Sancho, £100 million players, and can really change it. They want to go defensively, they can. Newcastle haven't really got those options at the moment. So I think one thing you do take away from this is that they need that squad depth. Didn't get it in January. You imagine with the owner sitting in the boardroom, as well as Eddie Howe, taking notes. And when he reflects on the bigger picture, he'll probably sit back, I would think, and think, okay, this is where we need to add additions. We've got top players like Bruno, Joe Linton. You can maybe even include Isak in that. But aside from that, really, first 13, I think this afternoon we learned that, well, probably didn't learn, probably reaffirmed that Newcastle need a little bit more. But that's to come hopefully in the summer window. But as we finish off here on the Everything is Black and White podcast YouTube channel, disappointing not to be heading home with the cup, but fantastic to be here. Great achievement to be at a final. We look ahead hopefully to a victory against Manchester City. Don't feel too downbeat about it. These guys have had a fantastic weekend, and fingers crossed. What we can do is we can take the experience. Newcastle will take the experience. Eddie Howe will take the experience. The squad will take the experience, and just use it to build back better, stronger. And next time they're in a cup final, they'll win. This has been the Everything's Black and White podcast. Hit that subscribe button, bringing you loads of more great content.